Dawning of a new year is a time for change. And boy, does Chicago need to make some changes. This week, we'll give you our New Year's resolutions we think the Bears need to make to turn their fortunes around in 2025. And man, we hope they listen. Welcome back to Bear Era. This freaking team, man, they just can't seem to get things right. Ciaran, I hope your holiday was great. We're coming up on New Year's, and it's going to be a New Year's themed episodes for us. We're going to talk about some resolutions the Bears have to make in 2025 to be a better franchise. But before we get there, how are you, man?
I'm good. My holidays were better than watching the Bears score 3 points against the Seattle Seahawks. So yeah, it was a good week despite the pitiful performance from our favorite team. But it seems to be a weekly occurrence right now.
It is the rut they're in, and it is not a fantastic rut. And it certainly doesn't help that the rest of their division has suddenly, not necessarily overnight, become an NFL superpower. The rest of the NFC North is charging forward to double-digit wins and playoff berths and everything else. And it's going to make the hill the Bears have to climb even taller. That's not their fault, but it does make the hole they're in deeper regardless of whether they like it or not. All right, we're going to skip straight to the season summary. We're not going to belabor this. It's going to be a fairly short podcast. The Bears are 4-12. The upcoming schedule is the Packers, and then it's over. That's it. That's all we really care about. Mercifully, this season will be done. We're not going to go into it more deeply than that, and we're not even going to do top trio this week. We're going to do top duo. And as mentioned, it's going to be two resolutions we think the Bears need to make in 2025 to be a better team. Ciaran will have two, I'll have two, and then Mike will have two in his Mike on the Mic segment. So that'll be 6 total for the team over the course of what we're talking about. And really, that's our focus for the offseason, which is what everybody wants to get to. Everybody has reached out to me over the past couple of weeks and said, where is the sim to end the season button? We want to press it. We want to press it right now. If you need to do that as a Bears fan, absolutely. We will be here for you in the offseason. We'll talk to you next week about how we'll be here and how we'll show up. But for now, kicking off top duo, Ciaran, what is your top New Year's resolution that the Bears need to follow to be a better team in 2025?
There's so many options here that I could pick. There's so many options that I could pick, and I'll talk in my second one. I'll talk maybe a little bit more about kind of the future and the decisions that I think the Bears need to make. My first one, I'm going to go very kind of the one change I think that whoever comes in next year needs to make. And it's something that has annoyed me all season. And that is whoever comes in, whether it's offensive, defensive, I don't care who it is, and probably needs to be in conjunction with the president of football operations and whoever the GM will be. Stop the players doing so many goddamn interviews because it is not good. I am sick of hearing whoever it is, Cole Kmet, Jalen Johnson, all these guys talk about what they want. Like I heard Jalen Johnson talking about the coaches that he would like. I don't care who Jalen Johnson wants as his coach. I only care about who the Bears who have to make this decision want, because ultimately the players decided not to play for one of the coaches and then gave up when that guy got fired. So if there's one New Year's resolution I think the Bears as an organization need to do is, I don't mind the odd interview, but stop having these guys go on weekly shows, weekly podcasts, and just focus on the game of football. Stop focusing on being media trained or trying to be likable within the fan base. I would rather never hear from Bears players and actually win football games than to hear from them complaining on why they lost. So that is my first New Year's resolution. Please stop these guys coming out week on week on week talking about stuff that really, when you lose, nobody wants to hear.
And strangely enough, my rebuttal will be from a player interview. So call that ironic if you want to. Kyler Gordon came out and said basically, when you watch the games in this division, the team with the better fundamentals wins, which sounds like the most basic kind of duh statement ever, but it speaks to what you're talking about. Focus on the product on the field. The rest of it will take care of itself. I think a little bit of all these player interviews is that there is a vacuum. They don't have a true head coach. They have a de facto head coach who most people at this point think is a lame duck. They don't really want to hear from him. So they want to hear from somebody, and they got to fill the papers. They got to fill the press. They got to fill the airwaves. And they're doing it with player interviews right now. And I'm with you. It's not a great look because you don't get a centralized sense of what the team wants to do. They're asking players about their opinions, and they're giving them. Good for them. They get to have opinions no matter what. But I really think that they should be focusing on the product on the field. And if they do that, everything will work itself out. My first resolution for the Bears is get the head coach hire right. And the reason I put it at the top is because if you don't do that, nothing else matters. I could fill the roster with hand-chosen draft picks. You could give me 15 first-round picks for the Bears. I could stock the roster. And if the guy leading the franchise doesn't understand how to use them, how to develop them, how to talk to them, communicate with them, how to bring in a coaching staff and control them as well and guide them, none of this matters. You can get all the raw materials and resources you'd like. If you don't have a unified vision and leadership, which is really the head coach's job in the NFL, is to say, this is the way we're going to play football. This is the path forward. This is what we're going to do. These are the things that are important. If you don't find a person that has those aligned correctly and is able to communicate them and get everybody pulling in the same direction, all this is for naught. It's just talk. It's just hot air. And it will fail again. And the Bears will burn through another highly drafted quarterback, and they won't have success on the field. So they have to nail the head coach hire. It doesn't have to be an offensive guy. It probably will be. I totally understand that. This isn't a knock against offensive guys or not. There is a huge pressure in Chicago to score points because the offense has traditionally been fairly horrible. And if you can't do that in the modern NFL and you lose because you can't score enough points, I don't care who you are. Offensive head coach, defensive head coach, leader of men, doesn't matter. If you can't do that, you are in trouble. So nail the head coach hire, get it right. If you don't, nothing else is going to matter. We've seen all the rapid turnarounds in the NFL. We've seen it with Houston. We've seen it with the Panthers. We've seen it to a point with the Arizona Cardinals, right? They got the head coach hire right. The Lions are the obvious example inside the division. Also the Vikings. They got the head coach hire right. The team followed, and success was right there for them. It's not an accident. It's because those were the right guys to lead the organization at this time. Bears need to find that guy. They traditionally have not been able to do that. So it's a tall task, but it's also the only thing that really matters.
Yeah, is it too bad if my second one is don't go looking in the CFL for a head coach?
It is not too bad. There are good coaches there too. I know some CFL coaches. There are good coaches there too. But again, you got to get the right guy. And people will say, oh, what about college? Because of Harbaugh, who doesn't really qualify. He was a pro guy and a college guy, both. He had experience in both worlds. But, I don't really care where you find them. They have to be the right guy. Are the chances smaller if they're a college head coach because the jump from college to the pros is a thing? They are different games. Yeah, it is. CFL, same thing, different games. Does it mean that there are no coaches there that could do it? No, it doesn't. Does it mean the pool's a little bit smaller and that they're going to have to run faster and drink from a fire hose when they show up? It does.
My second one is kind of on the back of your point where obviously the head coaching hire needs to be kind of the main priority here. And my main kind of what I want the Bears to be able to do is to, in this coaching searches, to do things in the right way. right? Be prepared. Like, we hear about the likes of Pete Carroll being interested, Mike Vrabel's contract is over. If you're interested in talking to them, don't wait to the end of the season where you're going to want to pool your resources into guys that are currently working. Like, we know there's specific windows to where you can interview the likes of a Ben Johnson or a Liam Cohen or a Joe Brady, who are all going to be in the playoffs, pretty much. We're not sure in the books, but like everybody else will be in the playoffs. There's only certain times that you're going to be able to interview those guys. So get a fast start here where if you want to talk to a Mike Vrabel, interview him this week, because you want to get that interview out of the way so that if you're still interested, you can schedule a second interview, but you have an idea of if that he's a genuine candidate. The one thing I would say is don't be stuck in the idea of it has to be one guy or the other, because I look at some of these coaches, you look at people want the offensive guy. That's great. Ben Johnson has had a fantastic year, has had a lot of experience as being the OC, and has really built himself up. But he's not the only option. Like, you look at what Liam Cohen has done with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like, that has been really impressive. But then you look at Joe Brady, and they have the most amount of rushing touchdowns, the most amount of passing touchdowns, and they sold off a bunch of their players because of cap reasons, and they have the least amount of sacks allowed. Like, you look at guys like that where they've put in a system in place. You can talk about guys that haven't really gotten the publicity this year, even though they've had a fantastic season, like Kellen Moore with the Eagles, who before has been part of it. So what I want the Bears to do is to look at all these candidates, do the interviews, and don't just be like, okay, so it's definitely has to be this guy or this guy. Like, go into it with an open mind that if somebody comes in, they can put together a plan for your team going forward, that they can show you that these are the coaches that I can bring with me. Like, that is so critical. And ultimately, the reason why the Bears have made mistakes in the past is they've hired coaches that either thought that they could do it all themselves, which most coaches can't, or they just weren't able to put a proper plan in place. Like, it is very obvious. The last two coaches we've had, Matt Nagy, Matt Eberflus. Nagy had success because Vic Fangio was still here, so he was a quality coach. So that's why they were good so early on. But then when everything changed, you had offensive line coach getting fired, offensive coordinator getting fired, and then your defensive coordinator goes. You replace them, and you show that you can't actually put a staff together. So my second main resolution is that the Bears go into this head coaching search with an open mind, that they don't go in just being like, Ben Johnson is our number one guy, or else if it's not him, we want this kind of overarching guy, which has to be Mike Vrabel. No. Go into have your candidates, have your whatever it is, usually 7 to 9 candidates they usually interview. Go in with an open mind, no preconceptions, and whoever does impress you, bring them in again. Like, do this the way functional organizations do their head coaching search. Don't rush it, because you mentioned the perfect example. You mentioned Kevin O'Connell, who everybody talks about. He is a great leader. He's a fantastic offensive coach. But he was also the last coach that was hired in his cycle, where 12 coaches got hired. You do not have to hire someone in the first week of your head coaching search. If you let's say you do like Ben Johnson, don't be afraid to wait if the Lions end up making the Super Bowl. If he's the right guy, that's fine, you wait. If Liam Cohen is the right guy, you do it when where you're able to properly meet them. Like, that's what I just want, is whoever they end up hiring, do it in the right way, so that when we get at the back of this head coaching search, we can talk about this where, okay, they made the move because of reason A, reason B, reason C, and those reasons make footballing sense. In the past, we haven't seen that, and that's what I want to see the Bears do because that would be different from what they've done over the last couple of hires.
The Bears making sense? I don't know if you're asking for too much for Christmas, Ciaran. Maybe.
Probably.
Probably. My second New Year's resolution for the Bears is fix the interior offensive line. I know this sounds like a broken record, and I mean really fix it. I mean, don't just throw a bunch of money at it or a bunch of names at it and say, oh, it's good. And it really does go back to coaching. You need a quality offensive line coach. Now, there are a bunch of those out there, not as many as people might think, but they are available and you can get them. And one of the most tantalizing things about Ben Johnson possibly coming to the Bears is that he might be able to bring Hank Fraley with him as an offensive coordinator. We still know that Ben Johnson would be calling plays, but Hank Fraley has a great career in the NFL, very good since he's become a coach in the NFL at coaching offensive line. And if you have an offensive line coach that can develop young players, not just high picks, but undrafted free agents, mid-round players, all of them, it's a superpower. It allows you to, again, develop those players, move them into starting roles when high-priced players that you either can't re-sign or won't re-sign move on. You get comp picks for those players. Your young players are already schooled in the system. They come in. You look at what Philadelphia did with Cam Jurgens. They brought him in. They moved him from his natural position as center. He played a little bit of guard, got used to playing with Jason Kelsey. Kelsey retires. Jurgens moves over. Jeff Stoutland's in charge. Everything works as it should. That's great. So they need to fix the offensive line. There's a lot of ways to do it. There's free agency. There's the draft. There's coaching. They need to do all of them. And finally, get a center. Just get a center. Just buy the best one in free agency or draft it. Like, just don't go into another season without an established or a very high ceiling prospect center. One that's going to be with your team for the next 5 to 7 years, anchor the middle of the line, play well, be a rock that you can build around. Just do it. Do what it takes. Pay the cost. Don't say, we can get by with anymore. Because the answer is, so far, you haven't been able to, and you can't. Until you fix that, you're really not going to get a clean evaluation of Caleb or an offense or anything else. If 50% of your plays are collapsing into immediate pressure, you don't have a really good idea about what works because you don't know. You haven't had time to figure it out. So fix the interior offensive line. That's my second one. Those are our New Year's resolutions for the Bears. We hope they follow some or all of them moving forward. We, too, would like to see them be a quality NFL franchise that, as Ciaran says, does things the right way. It would be a welcome change. But, as always, we're going to give our super producer, Mike Mercado, his shot to share with you his thoughts on 2 resolutions the Bears need to make in 2025 to be a better team, and you'll see that right here.
Thank you, EJ and Ciaran. And we're going to continue the conversation of what the Chicago Bears must improve on in 2025 to have a much more successful season than what we just witnessed this past year. And the first thing is communication, from the president to the GM, all the way down to the coaching staff and the players. Too many times this season, we heard that the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. From players and coaches to the front office, people seem to not know who was in charge at any given point, or what the play call was, or who was in charge of taking care of timeouts, or video replay, or formations, or substitutions. Too much of the Chicago Bears' problems are self-induced wounds, and it starts with communication. So that's the first thing that they have to get better at next year. The second thing is scouting. This team, this front office, too often is reaching for players, is looking for projects at coveted draft positions, are over-evaluating and overvaluing players on the open market. Teams that are successful in the NFL know how to work with the salary cap, know how to find the best talent within the margins, how to get the best out of every single player because they have a competent head coaching staff. That is what the Bears need to do to be more successful, to be a winning football team next year in one of the toughest divisions in the entire National Football League. Communication and scouting. I hope you guys have a wonderful, happy new year and a prosperous 2025, just like the Chicago Bears hopefully will have themselves. Back to EJ and Ciaran.
So there you go. 6 thoughts from the 3 of us on what the Bears need to do, a blueprint, if you will, in 2025 to follow to not be the team they were in 2024, because none of us want to see that again anytime soon. It was extremely painful. And that leads us into cheers and thanks for the year. We want to end this year with gratitude. This is our last podcast. You'll see from us before the new year or right at it, depending on when it comes out. And I want to give some thanks out to all of you for sticking with us. We're a new podcast, for giving us a chance to be part of your weekly cycle in terms of the Bears, listening to our voices, lending yours for Fan Question of the Week. All of that support has been tremendous. We don't take any of it for granted. I want to thank our editor, Neil, for sticking with us and delivering the goods overnight like Santa every week, coming in and saying, hey, here's your edit, check it out, get it up. He's been fantastic. What you see would not be the same without him. So a huge thanks to Neil. For Blue Wire, for putting us out every week on the audio airwaves, for Homage, for keeping us looking good all season long. Again, QR codes on the screen. If you want to scan that in, select it, you can get some of the comfiest t-shirts and sweats anywhere, delivered straight to your door, and we get a cut of that. It's one of the best ways to support this podcast. Ciaran, who do you have for thanks for 2024?
Well, it's definitely not the Chicago Bears for the 2024 season. I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, it kind of re-emphasizes what you said. The people that listen to the podcast, it's new, but also all the guests that we've had on for this early stage of it, because they've been very gracious with their time, and it's been a lot of fun. And we hope that as we hit into 2025, that there will be way more positives for us to talk about on this podcast, because you want to have a bit of hope, and the Bears need to show us as fans, show to a point everybody that's within that building that they want to get better. Because in the past it has seemed like they were fine with just getting by. Now we've got to get to the point of where you took the quarterback, where there's people that believe in him. Now you need to try and build this thing the right way so that the fans can get back on board, because it has been disappointing that there's this kind of malaise of people just not really caring about this team. And that shouldn't be the case, because the Chicago Bears fans are one of the best fan bases out there, because they do care about this football team. Sundays are all about the Chicago Bears, and they've given us every reason this year for it not to be about the Chicago Bears. So I want to be able to talk about in 2025 with all of you guys listening to the podcast, with all your great fan questions every single week, and we can talk about the positives and how this team is going to build this thing the right way, where the Bears aren't going to be the laughing stock of the NFL. We don't want to be there. This needs to change. I hope that it will. So yeah, my thanks goes to all you guys that listen to us, all the brilliant guests that have been on, and to a fruitful 2025.
New Year's certainly a time for change. We hope the Bears make that change. We hope you don't make a change and stay with us into the new year. We will be here for you. Hope you all have a happy and safe new year, and we will see you in 2025.